Dae-ho Kim stared at his empty coffee cup and sighed. The campus coffee shop was expensive, but he needed the caffeine to stay awake during his late study sessions. His bank account showed $23.15. That would have to last him until his next tutoring payment came in. The Galactic University of New Seoul was impressive, with its floating buildings and holographic displays showing students from dozens of different worlds. Earth had joined the galactic community only 5 years ago, and this university was humanity's first real attempt at interstellar education. Dae-ho felt lucky to be here, even if he could barely afford ramen noodles most days. He opened his xenobiology textbook and tried to focus on the chapter about silicon-based life forms. The words seemed to blur together. Working 3 part-time jobs while maintaining a perfect grade point average was taking its toll. His roommate Jin Woo kept telling him to ask his parents for money, but Dae-ho knew his family had already sacrificed everything to send him here. "Excuse me, are you Dae-ho?" "Kim." Dae-ho looked up to see Professor Na Young Park standing beside his table. She was one of the few human professors at the university, and she taught advanced organic chemistry. Her reputation was legendary among the students. "Yes, Professor Park, is something wrong?" She sat down across from him. "Actually, I have a proposition for you. One of my students is struggling with organic chemistry concepts. She needs a tutor, and I think you would be perfect for the job." Dae-ho's eyes lit up. Tutoring paid well, much better than his current jobs washing dishes and cleaning laboratories. "What species is the student?" "I've worked with Andromedans and those blue-skinned traders from the Vega system." "She's Vellani, from the Helix Nebula." Dae-ho had never heard of the Vellani, but he nodded anyway. "When can I meet her?" "Right now, if you're available. She's waiting in my office." Professor Park led him through the university's main building. The hallways were filled with students from different worlds. Some walked on legs, others floated, and a few moved by methods Dae-ho couldn't even understand. The diversity still amazed him after 2 years of study. They reached Professor Park's office, and she opened the door. Inside, something beautiful and strange was waiting. The being looked like she was made of living crystal. Her body was tall and slender, with surfaces that caught and reflected light in impossible ways. When she moved, tiny sparkles of energy danced around her limbs. She had no face as humans understood it, but somehow Dae-ho could sense that she was looking at him. "Veltar, this is Dae-ho Kim. He's one of our best students in organic chemistry and xenobiology." The crystal being's voice came from somewhere within her body, like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. "Hello, Dae-ho Kim. I am grateful for your willingness to help me." "It's nice to meet you, Veltar. Professor Park says you're having trouble with organic chemistry." Veltar's crystalline form seemed to dim slightly. "My people, the Vellani, are masters of energy manipulation. We can bend a light, control electromagnetic fields, and even influence gravitational forces on a small scale. But organic chemistry is completely foreign to us." Professor Park gestured for them to sit down. "The Vellani have crystal-based physiology. They've never encountered carbon-based life until they joined the galactic community. For Veltar, understanding how organic molecules interact is like asking a human to visualize 11-dimensional mathematics." Dae-ho looked at Veltar with new interest. "What specific concepts are giving you trouble?" "All of them," Veltar replied, and her voice carried what sounded like embarrassment. "I cannot understand how these tiny pieces of matter can combine and change in so many ways. Your professor shows us diagrams, but they mean nothing to me. How can something so small create something as complex as life?" Dae-ho thought for a moment. He had always found organic chemistry intuitive, like solving puzzles that had clear patterns. But he had never tried to explain it to someone who didn't have carbon-based biology. "Let me ask you something," Dae-ho said. "When you manipulate energy, how do you know which frequencies will work together?" Veltar's form brightened. "I can feel the resonance. Different energy patterns have different harmonics. When they match, they amplify each other. When they clash, they cancel out. Organic molecules work the same way, Daeho said, getting excited. They have their own kind of resonance. Atoms want to share electrons in specific patterns. When the patterns match, the molecules stick together. When they don't match, they repel each other. But I cannot feel molecular resonance, Veltar said. How do you know which patterns will work? Daeho paused. He had never really thought about how he knew. The knowledge just seemed obvious to him. I guess I visualize it. I imagine the molecules as three-dimensional shapes, and I can see how they fit together. Professor Park was taking notes as they talked. This is fascinating. Veltar, would you be willing to work with Daeho twice a week? I think he might be able to help you develop new ways of understanding organic systems. Yes, Veltar replied, immediately. If Daeho Kim is willing to teach me, I will be a dedicated student. Daeho smiled. Of course. When do you want to start? Now? Veltar asked hopefully. They spent the next 2 hours in Professor Park's office. Daeho drew simple molecular diagrams and tried to explain how carbon atoms formed chains and rings. Veltar asked questions that showed she was thinking about the problems in completely different ways than any human would. As the session ended, Veltar's crystalline form was practically glowing with excitement. This is the first time organic chemistry has made any sense to me. Thank you, Daeho Kim. Just call me Daeho, and you're welcome. I think we're going to make a good team. Veltar made a sound like distant music. If we both pass our final examinations, I will prepare a traditional Velani celebration cocktail for you. It is made from pure energy and creates beautiful light displays. Daeho laughed. That sounds amazing. I'll hold you to that promise. As they left the office together, Daeho felt optimistic for the first time in weeks. Not only would the tutoring money help with his financial problems, but he was genuinely excited to work with Veltar. There was something special about her, way of thinking that challenged his own understanding. He had no idea that this simple tutoring arrangement would change both of their lives forever and eventually lead them on an adventure across the galaxy. For now, he was just happy to have found a friend who shared his love of learning, even if she was made of living crystal and came from a star system he couldn't even pronounce. The next morning, Daeho woke up with new energy. His bank account still showed $23.15, but soon that would change. More importantly, he had discovered something wonderful about being human that he had never realized before. Humans, it seemed, had a gift for understanding the patterns that held life together. 3 weeks into their tutoring sessions, Daeho was getting frustrated. He had tried every teaching method he could think of, but Veltar still struggled with basic organic chemistry concepts. Traditional diagrams meant nothing to her crystalline. Mind and mathematical formulas only confused her more. They sat in the university library's quiet study room. Veltar's crystal form was dim, which Daeho had learned meant she was tired or discouraged. Around them, other students whispered in dozens of different languages from across the galaxy. I am sorry, Daeho, Veltar said, her voice like sad wind chimes. Perhaps my people are simply not meant to understand carbon-based chemistry. Maybe Professor Park should find you a different student to tutor. Daeho shook his head. Don't give up yet. There has to be a way to make this work. He stared at the molecular diagram he had drawn, showing how benzene rings connected to form complex compounds. To him, it was as clear as reading words on a page. But to Veltar, it might as well have been random scribbles. His roommate Jin Woo walked by their table, carrying a stack of engineering textbooks. He stopped when he saw them struggling. Still having trouble with chemistry? Jin Woo asked. He was studying fusion reactor design and always seemed to have grease stains on his fingers from working in the engineering labs. Veltar learns differently than humans do, Daeho explained. I can't figure out how to make organic chemistry make sense to her. Jinwoo looked at Veltar with curiosity. What do you understand easily? Energy patterns, Veltar replied. Frequencies, vibrations, harmonic resonance. My people can feel how different energies interact with each other. That's it! Daeho suddenly exclaimed, jumping up from his chair. Several nearby students looked at him with annoyance, but he was too excited to care. What's it? Jinwoo asked. Music, Daeho said. Veltar, you said you can feel harmonic resonance, right? Well, molecules vibrate too. Every chemical bond has its own frequency. Veltar's crystalline form began to brighten with interest. Molecules vibrate? Everything vibrates, Daeho said, pulling out his tablet computer. Let me show you something. He opened a program that converted molecular vibration data into sound waves. He input the structure of a simple methane molecule and played the resulting audio. A low, steady tone filled the study room. This is what methane sounds like, Daeho said. The carbon atom vibrates at one frequency, and the hydrogen atoms vibrate at higher frequencies. When they bond together, they create this harmonic pattern. Veltar's entire body began to glow. I can understand this. The carbon provides the base note, and the hydrogens add the higher harmonics. Together they make a stable chord. Exactly, Daeho said. And when molecules react with each other, it's like two musical chords combining to create a new song. Over. The next hour, Daeho played the vibrational signatures of dozens of different molecules. Veltar absorbed every sound, her crystal form pulsing in rhythm with the molecular music. Other students in the library began to gather around their table, fascinated by the light show Veltar was creating. Play the benzene ring again, Veltar requested. Daeho played the complex harmonic pattern of benzene. Veltar listened carefully, then began to glow in a pattern that perfectly matched the molecular vibrations. I see it now, she said with excitement. The 6 carbon atoms create a circular harmony, like a round song that repeats itself, and the electrons dance between them, adding their own melody. A blue-skinned student from the Vega system approached their table. Excuse me, I am Hye Jin. I study in Veltar's molecular biology class. Is this a new teaching method? Daeho has found a way to translate molecular structures into music, Veltar explained, her voice bright with joy. For the first time, I can actually understand how these organic compounds work. Word spread quickly through the university. Within days, other alien students were asking for similar help. It turned out that many non-carbon-based species had trouble understanding organic chemistry, and Daeho's musical approach worked for several of them. Professor Park was amazed when she heard about the breakthrough. She invited Daeho to demonstrate his method during her next lecture. The classroom was packed with students from dozens of different worlds, all eager to see how human intuition could solve problems that had puzzled alien minds for generations. The key insight, Professor Park explained to the class, is that Daeho recognized that different species process information in fundamentally different ways. Instead of forcing Veltar to think like a human, he found a way to translate human understanding into concepts that made sense to her species. After the demonstration, Dr. Myung-Soo Lee from the Department of Interstellar Relations approached Daeho. Young man, what you've accomplished here is remarkable. You've essentially created a new field of xenopedagogy, the study of how to teach across species barriers. Daeho felt overwhelmed by all the attention. He had just been trying to help one student pass her chemistry class. He never expected it to become something bigger. I don't understand why this is such a big deal, he told Veltar as they walked across campus after the lecture. I just listened to what you said about how your people understand energy, and I tried to connect it to chemistry. That is exactly why it is a big deal, Veltar replied. Most species think their own way of understanding the universe is the only correct way. Humans seem to have a gift for seeing connections between different types of thinking. They sat on a bench in the university's central garden. Around them, plants from dozens of different worlds created a beautiful alien landscape. Some of the plants glowed, others moved without wind, and a few seemed to be singing in frequencies too low for human ears to hear. My people have been part of the galactic community for over 3,000 years, Veltar continued. In all that time, we have remained specialists in energy manipulation. We never learned to understand other types of science because we never had to. But humans have only been in space for a few decades, Deho said. We're still learning everything. Perhaps that is your advantage, Veltar suggested. You have not had time to become rigid in your thinking. You still see connections that older species have forgotten how to see. That evening, Deho called his parents back on Earth. His mother was excited to hear about his success, but his father seemed puzzled. So you're famous for teaching music to aliens? His father asked. Not exactly, Dad. I found a way to help different species understand concepts that were completely foreign to them. That's wonderful, son. Your grandmother always said you had a gift for explaining things in ways that anyone could understand. After ending the call, Deho realized his father was right. Even as a child, he had been good at helping classmates understand difficult subjects by finding new ways to explain them. He had never thought of it as anything special. Now, surrounded by species from across the galaxy, that simple human ability was turning out to be something remarkable indeed. The next day, Veltar arrived at their tutoring session practically vibrating with excitement. Deho, I have wonderful news. I just took a practice exam and I scored 92%. 3 weeks ago, I was failing completely. Deho grinned. That's amazing. I told you we'd figure it out. There is more, Veltar continued. The Villani Academic Council has heard about our success. They want to know more about human teaching methods. As Deho looked at his crystalline friend, he realized that their simple tutoring arrangement was becoming something much bigger than either of them had expected. But for now, he was just happy to see Veltar succeeding. Neither of them knew that their breakthrough would soon attract attention from the highest levels of galactic society. The final exam period arrived with unexpected news. Professor Park called an emergency meeting for all her students in the main lecture hall. Deho and Veltar sat together in their usual spot, surrounded by classmates from dozens of different worlds. Students, Professor Park announced, I have important information about your final examinations. This year, the Galactic Academic Council has decided to change the format. A worried murmur spread through the hall. Final exams were stressful enough without last-minute changes. Dr. Myung-Soo Lee stepped forward to join Professor Park at the podium. Instead of traditional written tests, you will be given real-world crisis scenarios. You will work in interspecies teams to solve actual problems that are happening right now across the galaxy. Veltar's crystalline form dimmed with concern. What kind of problems? She asked. Biological contamination, ecological disasters, medical emergencies, Dr. Lee explained. The Council believes that education should prepare students to help solve the galaxy's real challenges, not just memorize textbook answers. A tall student from the Rigel system raised one of his 4 arms. How will we be graded? Your success will be measured by whether your solutions actually work, Professor Park said. If your team saves lives or prevents disaster, you pass. If your solution fails, you fail the course. Deho felt his stomach tighten. He had been confident about taking a regular chemistry exam, but solving real crises was completely different. Around him, other students looked equally nervous. Teams will be assigned randomly, Dr. Lee continued. Each team will include members from at least 3 different species. You will have 72 hours to develop and implement your solution. The next morning, Deho checked the team assignments posted outside the chemistry building. He found his name paired with Veltar and 3 other students he had never met. Kef from the Andromeda Galaxy, Zira from the Tau Ceti system, and Bolin from one of Jupiter's moons. They met in Conference Room 7 to receive their assignment. A holographic display showed them a mining colony orbiting a red dwarf star. The colony looked peaceful from space, but the data readings told a different story. Colony designation Alpha 77, the computer announced in a mechanical voice. Population, 15,000 beings from 3 species. Status, critical biological emergency. The hologram zoomed in to show the colony's interior. Daeho could see beings from 3 different species working together in the mining tunnels. But something was wrong. Many of them were lying on the ground, obviously sick. 3 weeks ago, the computer continued, the colony began mining a new mineral deposit. Shortly after, members of all 3 species began experiencing severe illness. The symptoms are different for each species, but all are potentially fatal. Kef, who looked like a walking tree with silver bark, studied the medical data. The Corvin miners are experiencing cellular breakdown. The Thurian workers have respiratory failure. The human colonists are developing neurological damage. It must be something in the new mineral, Veltar said. But why would it affect 3 different species in 3 different ways? Zira, whose blue skin had patterns that shifted like clouds, pulled up chemical analysis of the mining site. The mineral contains compounds I have never seen before. They appear to be organic, but with unusual molecular structures. Daeho studied the data carefully. The mineral samples showed complex carbon chains with metallic elements woven throughout. It looked almost like organic chemistry, but with additions that shouldn't be possible in nature. Wait, he said slowly. I think I understand what's happening. This isn't just a mineral. It's some kind of fossilized biological material. Bolin, the human from Jupiter, looked confused. Fossilized how? Look at these molecular patterns, Daeho said, pointing to the chemical analysis. They're like organic molecules, but twisted into impossible shapes by millions of years of pressure and heat. But how does that cause different illnesses in different species? Veltar asked. Daeho thought about everything he had learned while tutoring Veltar. Each species had different biochemistry. What was harmless to one could be deadly to another. The fossilized molecules are breaking down under mining conditions, he explained. They're releasing fragments that interact differently with each species' biology. For Corvins, the fragments attack their silicon-based cells. For Thurians, they block oxygen absorption. For humans, they interfere with neural transmission. That makes sense, Kef said, his bark-like skin rustling. But how do we stop it? The team spent the next 24 hours working on the problem. They tried dozens of different approaches, but nothing seemed to work. Chemical neutralizers that helped one species made the others worse. Physical barriers slowed the contamination, but didn't stop it. Daeho was getting desperate when he remembered something from his tutoring sessions with Veltar. She had taught him about energy manipulation and how the Velani could change the vibration patterns of materials. Veltar, he said suddenly, what if we don't try to neutralize the molecules chemically? What if we change their vibrational frequency instead? Veltar's crystal form brightened. You want to use energy manipulation to stabilize the fossil fragments? Exactly. If we can lock the molecules into stable vibrational patterns, they won't break down and release toxins. But I cannot manipulate energy over such a large area, Veltar said. The mining colony is enormous. Bolin had been quietly working on his tablet computer. What if we don't have to cover the whole colony? What if we just target the source? He showed them his calculations. If we set up resonance amplifiers around the new mining site, Veltar could broadcast a stabilization frequency that would lock down all the fossil molecules in that area. Would that work? Zira asked. Daeho ran the numbers through his head. It was risky, but it might be their best chance. It could work, but we need to be very precise about the frequency. Too high, and we might damage the colony's equipment. Too low, and the molecules won't stabilize. They spent the next day refining their plan. Veltar would use her energy manipulation abilities to generate a specific frequency, the resonance. Amplifiers would spread that frequency throughout the mining site. The fossilized molecules would lock into stable patterns and stop releasing toxins. On the final day, they presented their solution to the examination committee. Professor Park, Dr. Lee, and several alien academics listened as Daeho explained their theory. "It's an interesting approach," said a professor with tentacles instead of arms. "But it has never been tested. What if you're wrong?" "Then people die," Daeho said simply. "But if we do nothing, they die anyway." The committee approved their plan. Within hours, emergency ships were carrying their equipment to the mining colony. Veltar traveled with the rescue team to personally manage the energy manipulation. Daeho waited anxiously in the university's communication center, watching real-time data from the colony. When Veltar activated her frequency generator, the mineral readings immediately began to change. "It's working!" Bolin shouted. "The toxic breakdown products are disappearing!" Over the next few hours, the sick colonists began to recover. The Corvin cellular damage stopped spreading. The Thurian breathing problems cleared up. The human neurological symptoms faded away. "Congratulations," Dr. Lee said, shaking Daeho's hand. "Your team just saved 15,000 lives." That evening, Veltar returned to campus, exhausted but happy. "We did it, Daeho. We actually saved them." "We couldn't have done it without your energy manipulation skills," Daeho replied. "Or without what I learned about different species' biochemistry while tutoring you." "The Velani Academic Council is very impressed," Veltar said. "They want to meet the human who helped develop this solution." Daeho felt a mixture of pride and nervousness. "What do they want?" "I am not sure," Veltar admitted. "But I think our little tutoring arrangement may have attracted more attention than we expected." Neither of them realized that their success had already been reported to the highest levels of Velani government, or that decisions were being made that would change both their lives forever. 2 days after their successful exam, Veltar invited Daeho to the Velani embassy for the celebration she had promised. The embassy was a beautiful crystal structure that seemed to grow from the ground like a living gemstone. Inside, everything sparkled with soft-colored light. "Welcome to my people's traditional celebration space," Veltar said as they entered a large room filled with other Velani. Their crystal bodies created a symphony of light and sound as they moved. Daeho had never seen so many Velani in one place. Each one was unique, with different patterns of crystal growth and different colors of inner light. The room hummed with energy that made his skin tingle. "This is for you," Veltar said, offering him a cup that seemed to be made of solid light. "A traditional Velani energy cocktail, as I promised." Daeho took the cup carefully. It felt warm, but not hot, and the liquid inside moved like liquid starlight. When he tasted it, flavors exploded across his tongue, some familiar, others completely alien. The drink created patterns of light that danced across his vision. "This is incredible," Daeho said. "What's in it?" "Pure energy, crystallized into flavor," Veltar explained. "It is how my people celebrate great achievements." Around them, other Velani were creating light shows that told stories of their homeworld. Daeho watched in amazement as their bodies generated holographic images of crystal cities and energy storms that danced across nebulae. The celebration was interrupted by the arrival of a Velani who was larger and more brilliant than the others. Her crystal structure was complex, with multiple layers that refracted light in impossible patterns. When she spoke, her voice carried the authority of command. "I am Commander Rethak of the Velani Exploration Fleet," she announced. "I need to speak with Daeho Kim immediately." The celebration stopped. All the Velani turned toward Daeho, their light dimming with concern. He felt very small and very human, surrounded by so many alien beings. Is something wrong? Deho asked. We have received an emergency transmission from the Outer Rim, Commander Rethak explained. The deep space exploration vessel Starwalker has gone missing in the Void Zone. Veltar's form brightened with alarm. The Void Zone? But that region is forbidden. The gravitational anomalies make it impossible to navigate. The Starwalker was on a scientific mission, Commander Rethak continued. They were studying the gravitational distortions when they sent their last transmission. That was 6 days ago. Deho didn't understand why this involved him. I'm sorry about the missing ship, but I'm just a student. What does this have to do with me? Commander Rethak's crystal form seemed to focus on him with intensity. The Starwalker carries a crew of 43 beings from 17 different species. It is the most diverse crew ever assembled for deep space exploration. That's tragic, but I still don't understand. If they are still alive, rescuing them will require the kind of interspecies problem-solving that you demonstrated during your examination, Commander Rethak explained. The Vel'Ani High Command has requested that you join our rescue mission, Deho. Felt his heart racing. You want me to go into space to help rescue people? Not just into space, Veltar said quietly. Into the most dangerous region of known space, aboard the most advanced ship in the Vel'Ani fleet. Commander Rethak gestured, and a holographic display appeared in the center of the room. It showed a sleek vessel that seemed to be built from the same living crystal as the Vel'Ani themselves. The ship was enormous, easily the size of a small city. This is the Stellar Harmony, Commander Rethak said with obvious pride. She is our newest exploration vessel, capable of manipulating space-time itself. Her energy manipulation systems can bend reality in ways that no other ship can match. The ship was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. Deho could see sections that pulsed with energy, and others that seemed to exist in multiple dimensions. Simultaneously. Why do you need me? Deho asked. You have the most advanced technology in the galaxy. Technology is not enough, Commander Rethak replied. The Void Zone affects different species in different ways. Some lose their ability to navigate. Others experience temporal displacement. A few species go completely insane from the gravitational distortions. Veltar moved closer to Deho. Humans seem to be uniquely resistant to these effects. Your species' psychological flexibility allows you to adapt to conditions that would destroy other minds. But I've never been in space before, Deho protested. I don't know anything about rescue missions or space navigation. You know how to solve problems that seem impossible, Commander Rethak said. You know how to work with different species and find solutions that none of them could discover alone. That is exactly what this mission requires. Commander Tae-min Choi, a human military liaison, entered the room at that moment. He was wearing the uniform of Earth's new Space Defense Force, and his presence made the situation feel suddenly real. Deho Kim, Commander Choi asked, I'm here to brief you on the mission parameters. Earth's government has approved your participation if you're willing. Earth knows about this? Deho asked in surprise. Your success at the mining colony has made you famous, Commander Choi explained. The Galactic Council is calling it the first major breakthrough in cross-species crisis management. Both Earth and the Vel'Ani government want to see what else you can accomplish. Deho looked around the room. Every Vel'Ani was watching him, their crystal forms pulsing with anticipation. Veltar stood beside him, ready to support whatever decision he made. What about my classes? Deho asked weakly. Your professors have agreed to count this mission as independent study credit, Commander Choi said. If you succeed, you'll graduate with honors. If we fail, 43 beings die, Veltar finished quietly. Deho thought about the mining colony, where his collaboration with Veltar had saved 15,000 lives. He thought about his tutoring sessions, where he had learned that humans had unique abilities that could help other species in ways they never expected. When do we leave? He asked. Commander Rethak's crystal form blazed with approval. In 2 hours. The stellar harmony is already preparing for departure. The next 2 hours passed in a blur. Daeho called his parents to explain that he was going on a special research mission. He packed a small bag with basic supplies, though Commander Choi assured him that everything he needed would be provided aboard the ship. Jin Woo helped him gather his textbooks and research notes. "I can't believe my roommate is going into deep space," Jin Woo said with amazement. "Try not to get eaten by space monsters." "There's no such thing as space monsters," Daeho replied, though he wasn't entirely sure he believed it. As they prepared to leave for the spaceport, Veltar approached him with something that looked like a crystal pendant. "This is a communication crystal," she explained. "It will allow you to contact your family on Earth, no matter how far we travel." "Thank you," Daeho said, putting the crystal around his neck. "Veltar, are you sure about this? The void zone sounds incredibly dangerous." "I am sure," Veltar replied, her voice filled with determination. "We make a good team, Daeho. Together we can solve problems that neither of us could handle alone." At the spaceport, the stellar harmony waited like a crystal mountain that had learned to fly. As Daeho walked up the boarding ramp, he realized that his simple tutoring arrangement had led him to this moment, about to travel into the most dangerous region of space to rescue beings he had never met. He had no idea what challenges waited for them in the void zone, but he was beginning to understand that humans might have a larger role to play in the galaxy than anyone had imagined. The stellar harmony moved through space like a living crystal, its hull pulsing with energy patterns that Daeho was beginning to recognize as the ship's equivalent of breathing. 3 days into their journey, he was still amazed by everything around him. The ship's crew was unlike anything he had ever imagined. Besides the Vellani, there were beings that looked like walking plants, others that seemed to be made of liquid metal, and a few species that existed partially in other dimensions. Everyone had a specific job, and they all worked together with smooth efficiency. Navigator Jun Ho, another human who had joined the Vellani fleet 2 years earlier, showed Daeho the star charts of their destination. The void zone appeared as a dark patch on the display surrounded by warning symbols. "Space works differently in there," Jun-ho explained. "Gravity pulls in directions that shouldn't exist. Time moves at different speeds in different areas. Most ships that enter the zone are never seen again." "Then why did the Star Walker go in there?" Daeho asked. "They were studying the gravitational anomalies," said Dr. Yonseo Kong, the ship's chief scientist. She was a human xenobiologist who had been working with the Vellani for 5 years. The theory was that understanding the void zone might help us develop faster-than-light travel methods. Through the ship's transparent crystal walls, Daeho could see the stars beginning to look strange. They seemed to bend and twist, as if space itself was being warped by invisible forces. "We are approaching the edge of the void zone," Veltar announced over the ship's communication system. As the ship's energy specialist, she was responsible for keeping their system stable in the dangerous region. Commander Rethak called all senior crew members to the bridge. Daeho wasn't sure if he qualified as senior crew, but Veltar insisted he come along. The bridge was a circular room made entirely of crystal that allowed them to see in all directions. As they crossed into the void zone, reality itself seemed to ripple around them. "Gravitational readings are off the scale," reported the navigation officer, a being that looked like a collection of floating geometric shapes. "I'm detecting gravity wells that pull in 7 different directions simultaneously." "Energy patterns are becoming unstable," Veltar added, her crystal form flickering as she tried to maintain the ship's power systems. "The normal laws of physics are breaking down." On the main display, Daeho could see the wreckage of dozens of ships that had tried to enter the void zone over the centuries. Some were twisted into impossible shapes, others seemed to exist in multiple time periods at once. "There," Dr. Kang pointed at the display. "I'm detecting life signs from that direction, but the readings are strange." Strange how? Commander Rethak asked. The Star Walker appears to be intact, but it's not moving through normal space. It's existing in some kind of pocket dimension. As they moved deeper into the zone, the crew began to experience the effects that made the region so dangerous. The plant-like crew members started moving in slow motion. The liquid metal beings began to lose their shape. Several crew members reported seeing things that weren't there. The dimensional distortions are affecting everyone differently, Dr. Kang observed. Each species is experiencing a different type of reality breakdown. Daeho noticed that he seemed to be the only one unaffected. While the other crew members struggled with the strange physics of the void zone, his human brain continued to process information normally. "Veltar, can you hear me?" he asked over the communication system. "Yes, but your voice sounds like it's coming from very far away," she replied. "The energy distortions are making it hard for me to maintain the ship's systems. I'm coming to help you," Daeho said. He made his way through the ship's corridors to the engineering section where Veltar was working. She was surrounded by crystal control panels that were flickering wildly as the void zone's effects intensified. "I cannot stabilize the energy flow," she said with frustration. "The gravitational anomalies are interfering with everything." Daeho studied the energy readings, applying the pattern recognition skills that had helped him teach Veltar organic chemistry. Slowly, he began to see a pattern in the chaos. "Veltar, what if the gravitational anomalies aren't random?" he suggested. "What if they're being created by something intelligent?" "What do you mean?" "Look at these readings. The gravitational distortions have a rhythm to them, like a heartbeat or breathing pattern. This isn't natural physics going wrong. Something is controlling the anomalies." As if responding to his words, the ship's sensors detected massive shapes, moving through the twisted space around them. These beings were enormous, existing partially outside normal dimensions. They seemed to be made of gravity itself, bending space-time as they moved. "Void entities," Commander Rethak said with awe and terror. "The ancient stories said they lived here, but no one believed they were real." The entities surrounded the stellar harmony, and suddenly the ship was pulled into a pocket of stable space. Here, the normal laws of physics worked again, and the crew could function normally. In the center of this stable area, they found the Star Walker. The exploration vessel was intact but motionless, surrounded by a shimmering energy field. "The crew is alive," Dr. Kang reported after scanning the ship. "But they appear to be in some kind of suspended animation. The void entities are trying to communicate with us," Daeho realized, studying the energy patterns around both ships. "They've been holding the Star Walker crew in stasis to keep them safe." "Communicate how?" Veltar asked. Daeho watched as reality itself began to shift around them. The void entities were changing the structure of space-time to create images and concepts directly in their minds. Most of the crew began to panic as their perceptions of reality shifted. But Daeho found that his human brain could adapt to the strange method of communication. Gradually, he began to understand what the entities were trying to tell them. "They're showing us something," he said with growing alarm. "Something coming from outside our galaxy." The images in his mind showed a vast darkness approaching from intergalactic space. It was a force that consumed entire star systems, leaving nothing but empty void in its wake. "They're trying to warn us," Daeho continued. "The void entities have been watching for this threat for millions of years. They brought the Star Walker crew here to witness the evidence." "But why?" Commander Rethak asked. "Why show us this?" "Because most species can't handle this kind of communication without going insane," Daeho realized. "But humans can adapt to it. We can serve as translators between the void entities and the rest of the galaxy." The entities continued their communication, showing Daeho detailed information about the approaching threat. The intergalactic force would arrive within a few decades, and when it did, it would consume everything in its path. "We need to get this information back to the Galactic Council," Daeho said. "The entire galaxy needs to prepare for what's coming." The void entities seemed to understand his words. They released the Star Walker from stasis and created a safe corridor through the gravitational anomalies that would allow both ships to return to normal space. As they prepared to leave the void zone, Daeho realized that their rescue mission had become something much more important. They weren't just saving 43 crew members. They were carrying information that could determine the survival of every living being in the galaxy. "Veltar," he said as they watched the void entities fade back into their dimensional hiding places, "I think our tutoring sessions prepared us for something bigger than we ever imagined." "Yes," she replied, her crystal form pulsing with determination. "And I think humanity's real test is just beginning." The journey back to Vel-Ani space took 5 days, but for Daeho, it felt like a lifetime. The rescued crew members from the Star Walker were recovering slowly from their experience in the Void Zone. Each species had been affected differently by the reality distortions, and many were still struggling to understand what they had witnessed. Captain Min Seok of the Star Walker, a human explorer who had spent 20 years in deep space, found Daeho in the ship's observation deck. "I heard you were the one who figured out how to communicate with the void entities," Captain Min Seok said, sitting down beside him. "I just recognized patterns that others couldn't see," Daeho replied, watching the stars return to their normal appearance as they moved away from the anomalous region. "My crew includes representatives from 17 different species," Captain Min Seok continued, "some of the most brilliant minds in the galaxy, but none of them could handle what those entities were trying to show us. The Andromedans went into shock. The Rigel mathematicians started speaking in impossible equations. Even our AI systems crashed. But you and I stayed sane," Daeho observed. "Exactly. What is it about humans that makes us different?" Daeho thought about his tutoring sessions with Veltar, about how he had learned to translate concepts between completely different ways of thinking. Maybe it's because we're still new to all this. We haven't had time to become rigid in our understanding of how the universe works. When they reached Vel-Ani space, the stellar harmony was met by a fleet of ships from across the galaxy. Word of their discovery had already spread through the galactic communication networks. Representatives from dozens of species wanted to hear about the threat from intergalactic space. The debriefing took place on the Vel-Ani homeworld, in a crystal amphitheater that could hold thousands of beings. Daeho found himself standing before the most important leaders in the galaxy, trying to explain something that most of them couldn't truly comprehend. "The entities showed me visions of what's coming," Daeho said, his voice amplified by Vel-Ani. "Technology so that every being in the amphitheater could understand him in their own language. It's not just a single enemy ship or fleet. It's something that consumes entire star systems." Admiral Sun-Ho Park, who had arrived from Earth with a delegation of human officials, stood up to address the assembly. "How long do we have?" "The entities indicated roughly 30 to 40 Earth years," Daeho replied. But the exact timeline was hard to interpret through their reality-shifting communication method. A representative from the Tau Ceti collective, whose species had blue skin with shifting cloud patterns, raised a tentacled arm. "You claim that humans can communicate with these void entities better than other species. How do we know this information is accurate?" Veltar stepped forward to support her friend. "I have worked closely with Daeho for months. His ability to recognize patterns and adapt to new forms of communication is unlike anything I have seen in other species. The Star Walker's sensor logs confirm everything Daeho has reported," Captain Min Seok added. "The intergalactic threat is real, and it's coming whether we believe it or not." Dr. Yon Seo Kang presented the scientific data they had gathered. "Our analysis shows that the approaching force operates by converting matter directly into energy, then using that energy to power itself. Entire solar systems disappear, leaving nothing behind." The amphitheater erupted in worried discussions, as representatives from different species tried to process the magnitude of the threat. Some called for immediate military mobilization. Others suggested fleeing to distant galaxies. A few insisted that the whole story was impossible. Commander Rethak stood up, her crystal form blazing with authority. The question is not whether this threat exists. The question is how we respond to it. "What do the void entities suggest?" asked a delegate from the Andromeda Galaxy. Daiho closed his eyes, remembering the complex visions the entities had shown him. They believe that different species working together might be able to develop defenses that no single civilization could create alone. But it will require the kind of cooperation that has never existed before in galactic history. And they believe humans are essential to making this cooperation work, Veltar added. Over the following weeks, the Galactic Defense Council was formed with Daiho serving as the first human ambassador. His job was to facilitate communication between species that had never worked together before, using the same skills that had helped him teach Veltar organic chemistry. The challenges were enormous. Each species had different strengths, different technologies, and different ways of understanding the universe. The energy-manipulating Velani could bend space-time, but struggled with biological systems. The plant-like Corvins were masters of living technology, but couldn't work with synthetic materials. The mathematical Rigel species could solve any equation, but had trouble with intuitive leaps. Daiho found himself traveling between worlds, teaching species how to share knowledge in ways they could all understand. He developed translation methods that went beyond language, helping beings communicate concepts that had no words in their respective cultures. Veltar became his partner in this work, serving as the Velani liaison to Earth. Together, they established the first truly integrated research stations where scientists from dozens of species worked side by side. "Remember when you promised me a cocktail if we passed our exams?" Daiho asked her one evening as they watched construction begin on a massive defense platform in orbit around Earth. "That seems like a lifetime ago," Veltar replied, her crystal form pulsing with warm light. "I never imagined that tutoring session would lead to all this. Do you think we can do it? Can we actually defend the galaxy against something that powerful?" "I do not know," Veltar admitted, "but I know that we have a better chance working together than any species would have alone." The void entities were right about one thing. Humans have a gift for bringing different minds together. 3 years after their return from the void, Zone, the first prototype of the galactic defense system, was completed. It combined Velani energy manipulation, Corvin biological computing, Rigel mathematical precision, and human adaptability into something that no single species could have created. Daiho stood in the command center, surrounded by beings from across the galaxy, watching as the system came online for its first test. The defense platform successfully deflected a simulated intergalactic-level energy attack. "The test is successful," announced the AI system that had been programmed with knowledge from 17 different species. "Defense grid is operational." Cheers erupted from beings who expressed joy in dozens of different ways. Some sang, others glowed, and a few simply vibrated with happiness. Admiral Park approached Daiho with a smile. "Not bad for a graduate student who just wanted to pass his chemistry exam." "I'm still just trying to help people understand each other," Daiho replied. "It's the same thing I was doing when I tutored Veltar, just on a bigger scale." "And that," said Veltar, joining their conversation, "may be exactly what the galaxy needs to survive." As Daiho looked around the command center at beings from dozens of worlds working together toward a common goal, he realized that his simple tutoring arrangement had indeed led to something extraordinary. Humanity had found its place in the galaxy not as conquerors or subjects, but as the bridge builders who could help different species achieve things none of them could accomplish alone. The intergalactic threat was still coming, but for the first time since the void entities had delivered their warning, Daiho felt hope. The galaxy was united in a way it had never been before, and humans had played a crucial role in making that unity possible. His grandmother had been right. He did have a gift for explaining things in ways that anyone could understand. Now that gift might help save billions of lives across thousands of worlds. The real test was still ahead of them, but they would face it together.